All right, so let's do our lecture on the fall of the Moche. All right, so to begin with, the Moche civilization in northern Peru begins to fall around the year 560. Around the year 560 CE AD, which means the same thing. So the Moche civilization begins to fall around the year 560. And as we saw, this was an advanced civilization that had been around for hundreds of years. Advanced culture, weapons, farming. But in 560 it begins to fall. So what causes this civilization to fall? We don't know for sure, but many historians believe that the weather and environment played a huge factor. We'll start with El Nino. We talked about El Nino, the weather patterns. That can bring a lot of rain, and it can bring no rain. Now, El Ninos can last a year or two, but they can also last like 30 years. So, there's evidence by looking at a lot of the buildings in northern Peru at this time that there was about a 30-year period of heavy rains beginning in 560. Yes?
Is this just like non-stop rain, or is it raining non-stop?
It's not non-stop rain, but it's much, much heavier than normal, which would bring more floods. And there might be a season where it didn't happen, but it was a trend of 30 years of much more rain and much more flooding. Does that make sense? Yep.
When was it heavy rain again?
Started in 560 and lasted about 30 years. This meant there was a lot more flooding. Talked about the irrigation canals. Many of them would flood. There would be years where the crops would be lost, or many of the crops would be lost that were grown. After this 30 years of flooding, there was 30 years of drought. Almost no rain. This is already a desert area, so this would be very, very little rain after that. So you have a 60-year period, 30 years heavy rain, 30 years drought. Almost sounds like the Bible. So, what happens then? What you really want to know here is that when we talked about the video yesterday, we talked about the kings of the Moche, and the leaders were believed to have a special relationship with the gods. Like in many early civilizations, but the people believed that their leaders had a special relationship with the gods. And now think about this. Your leaders have a special relationship with the gods, but now we've had 60 years of really bad weather. So what I want you to do right now is turn and talk with your partner, and what do you think are some possible consequences of this for the leaders and the civilization? Go ahead. All right, let's hear some of our answers. I'll just say unnamed students since I'm recording this. Okay? So let's go with this unnamed student up here. You may give your answer loud. What were you guys talking about, or some possible consequences?
Some consequences would be how once they're running empire will lose everything, the control.
Losing control. Leaders losing control is a very, very good example of what could happen. Let's continue over here, unnamed student.
It would show like that they have a bad relationship because if they're like friends, the king and like the gods, then it would show like why are they being punished.
So if there's a bad relationship, do you still want to keep this king to communicate with the gods? What could the people possibly do? Rebellion. Rebellion. Fighting could happen against the leadership. I'm going to infer here a little bit, but it's very possible at this time there were rebellions, fighting, and there is evidence of fighting going on at this time period. At first, the historians thought they were attacked. but they couldn't find evidence of another group coming in and attacking them. And that led them to believe that this fighting was, with themselves, what we would call a civil war. Does that make sense? So that there was a civil war or wars, many groups attacking each other. And remember, multiple cities, multiple civilizations were part of this Moche. Multiple groups, multiple cities were part of the Moche civilization. So, fighting happens. There's more violence happening. There's fortresses that are built in the Moche against each other in different groups. So the theory is something we don't know 100% for sure, but it's the best idea we have backed with evidence to support it. The theory now of the Moche is that there was environmental problems with too much rain, drought caused from El Nino, which led to fighting as there was would there be a whole lot of crops, a whole lot of food right now? Low resources. People not believing in their leadership losing their contact with the gods or who would bring weather, and this would cause fighting, which eventually leads to the downfall of the Moche. And by 650 CE, the Moche civilization is no longer around. The people are there, but the civilization and the government no longer exist. Does that make sense? Now, other civilizations will follow and come later. Chan Chan is another example of a civilization that will be built in Peru. The Incas will come much later, but this civilization, the Moche, will fall, like many do in the classical era. They rise and then they fall. Okay?